Hello. Um, so I don't know how well this is going to work. I'm trying to do both YouTube and Facebook at the same time. So um, I've got a couple of I got the messages on Facebook. Let's see. I use my mouse left-handed because I'm in a sling, as you can kind of see. I got my right arm is immobilized for a few weeks. Saying my frame rate's too low, but I'm not worried about that. The audio is decent. Hopefully the audio is okay. Um, all right. So anyway, back in December, I was bowling a tournament, and at the end of the tournament, my shoulder was kind of bothering me a little bit, which is not unnormal. That's actually kind of a normal thing. And the next day, it still was bothering me a little bit. So that was a little interesting. And I was able to bowl league and stuff, and I was, you know, doing okay. And then in middle of February, I was bowling league at the end of the league. Um, threw the shot like in a 10 frame, and I'm like, oh, this is not good. It really hurt. And that night, I had a lot of trouble sleeping because it was very painful. Next day, I went to go see a doctor. A nurse practitioner or whatever gave me some pain medicine and some muscle relaxer. And then the next week, I ended up getting a cortisone shot, and that actually helped pretty good. Um, then I bowled some regionals in March, didn't have any problems, and then really didn't think a whole lot about it. Um, the the senior tour started at the end of April basically, or actually in the beginning of May, and then we had tournaments all the way through like the second week of August. So my plan was to bowl tournaments and then you know probably get surgery at the end of August if my shoulder held up. Um, Went to my doctor at the end of April, had an MRI, and the um, let's see, this error message and go away. Um, oh, great. Anyway, you can't hear me, huh? Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that. I guess I could have got my microphone. I didn't think about that. Unfortunately, I'm sitting down here. My microphone's way back there. um, but it just might not be. You just might need to turn your volume up. Um, so anyway, so I just I had the MRI back in late April, and the doctor saw the results, and based on that, my personal doctor thought that I should have shoulder replacement. I thought that was a bit severe, but I'm like whatever. So I then set around to trying to see some specialists. One of the bowlers on tour, Tom Carter from Columbus, Ohio, he's had surgery several times, and he raved about this um, doctor that he went to. So I thought, well, we got tournaments in Ohio in July, and like they just had the World Series for the senior 60 players in Columbus, and we had the final tournament was going to be in West Virginia in August. So I thought, well, that's pretty close. I'll set it up so I can, maybe have surgery that he could work on it, look at it, and work on it, at that point. Um, but in the meantime, I did see another doctor in my area down here in Florida, um, but he was not really excited about working on me because I just had a cortisone shot. So I'm like, well, okay. So I got the cortisone shot in early May to, hopefully get me to bowl through the tour in August, and then my plan was to have surgery after that. Unfortunately, I was bowling tournaments in May and really wasn't bowling very well. I can't really blame it on the shoulder. My wife thinks maybe that had something to do with it. It's possible because I wasn't practicing as much as I used to. But the you know, it really wasn't bothering me pain-wise. And when I was in Las Vegas after the two tournaments there, the 2 weeks, I was moving. I was checking out the hotel that I was at, and I picked up something that was a little bit on the heavy side, and I'm like, oh, this is not good. I mean, I definitely felt it, and but it wasn't horrible. And they were having some senior pot games that morning, so I thought, well, I'll go bowl these pot games and see how that goes. And for the first game in 8 frames, not a problem. And then in the ninth frame, wow, it really, really hurt. I was shooting a despair, and I actually stopped. If you watch, I've got a video of that little pot game thing, and I actually talked about what happened after that. But basically, it was like, oh, this is not good at all, and I'm like, I'm not going to be able to bowl anymore. I mean, it was very painful, and I actually threw at the spare. I stopped and I threw at the spare, and I missed the spare, obviously, and I'm like, yeah, this is not going to happen. So I'm like, yeah, my decision was to just basically not bowl any more tournaments, and try to get my surgery scheduled for as soon as possible instead of waiting till the end of August. So I thought, I'll do that. And so I was able to do that. I got my surgery scheduled on June 20th. I'm up in Ohio. And um, so now it's been almost 3 weeks. It's been tomorrow will be 3 weeks that I had the surgery. Um, and unfortunately, the doctor's like, no bowling for 6 months, and didn't even want me to pitch horseshoes left-handed for 2 months. But I told him, I was planning to go to the World Horseshoe Tournament, which is in a couple of weeks. And he's like, yeah, I don't want you doing that either. I'm like, okay, you say no, I'm not going to do that. So, because I want to be able to, I want to be able to bowl again and play horseshoes and stuff. So, I do compete left-handed most of the time playing horseshoes. That's just because my right arm doesn't cooperate. It's not that my right arm bothered me or anything. It just wasn't cooperating. I developed some bad habits, and it just turned out that many years ago when I was a kid, I learned how to play left-handed. And I actually finished second a couple of years at the World Tournament in the men's division. After my average got so low, I thought, if I started playing left-handed, I might have a little more fun, and I might do almost as well. And I actually did better the next 2 years playing left-handed than I did playing right-handed. Unfortunately, over the years, that was 20 years ago, I pitched left-handed, pitched right-handed, pitched left. I get frustrated. I go back and forth from one to the other, and I just don't pitch as well as I used to. I'm still good, but I used to be really, really, really good. And so for me, it's not great. But and unfortunately, I'm right-handed, so pitching left-handed, I can do it, but it's like I don't have the control that I'd like to have. And when I pitch right-handed, I feel like I should be able to do really better, but it's like I have no control with that either. So I don't know what's going on with that. My arm seems got all messed up. Anyway, so that's kind of how that's going. So I'm pretty much out of commission for the next however long. Another 5 months for bowling and another month and a half for horseshoes. So a little frustrating, but it is what it is. And hopefully I'll be better than ever before, and I can get some good practice in and hopefully get my game. I am 65, so and I knew that I was actually knowing that my even bowling on the senior tour that I'm not as competitive as I used to be. The last 2 seasons, I only made one top 5 on the PGA 50 tour. I made a couple in the 60 tournaments, but not the. There was only one in the top 50. I did manage to finish second to one tournament, but so I'm not nearly as competitive as I was. And like I said, when I bowled the tournaments in May, it was pretty much my worst stretch ever of 7 tournaments. I think I had 3 checks out of the 5 tournaments, and they were all super senior checks. I never I never got checks in the regular 60 in the 50 division. So that's pretty frustrating for me. It's it is the way it is. So all right, so I'm going to go through and see some of these questions. Somebody asked about volume. I don't know how to turn up the volume. As far as I know, it should be up pretty good. Let me go and see if I can actually get into that. I don't know why it would be low. It shouldn't be. Let's see. Let's see. Let's try that. Microphone privacy settings. I don't want that. Let's try sound settings. Volume. That one's on input. It says it's on full. It's on full. So I don't know why it's not louder than it is. I'm not trying to speak in a hush, so I all I can say is just turn it up a little bit. I'm sorry about that, Larry. So see what kind of questions we have. How much longer for the removal of this thing? I'm not 100% sure. I think about 2 months, so a total. So another month and a week or so. Um, I'm gonna talk to my surgeon in beginning of August and see how things are going. And it's going to be a televisit because he's in Ohio and I'm here down in Florida. So we'll see how what his recommendation is. I'm going to try to do what he suggests. What was your favorite bowling ball nowadays for the PDA 50? Last year I was really liking they came out with a couple balls, the Mesmerize and the Vaporize, and I really liked both of them. And over the course of time, I kind of liked the Vaporize a little bit more because it gave me a little bit more hook on the back end. And they came out with a lot of balls since then. Unfortunately, I drilled a couple, but I really haven't used them very much. And then, like I said, because my shoulder, I really wasn't practicing a whole lot. And when I was bowling the tournaments in May, I was using the Mesmerize a little bit more, and I did try the new Black Widow Mania, but other than that, I really didn't really use a whole lot. Well, there was also the other New Brunswick ball. I'm so bad with names. It was started with a C, I think. Anyway, I'm so bad with names. It was a blue ball, but I used that a little bit. But the bigger part was just me not throwing the ball the way I needed to, because and the pin's kind of laughing at my ball. So kind of frustrating. Here we go. Thanks for sharing so much content with us on YouTube. Sorry that you're injured. Wishing you a speedy. Well, thank you. Have you ever thought of going to full two-handed after you recover from the shoulder injury? It should protect your shoulder more. I haven't really thought about going full-time, but I thought I would definitely work on that a little bit more. For whatever reason, my underhand swing one-handed just got bad. And like I said, that's part of why my horseshoe game is not as good as it used to be. My swing is just not the way it used to be. And the other thing is, when I do start practicing in December or whenever it is, my plan is to work on that to get my swing a lot more the way it used to be, where it kind of tucked behind my back a little bit and come up closer to my leg. Right now, when it comes up, it's like it swings out and it stays out, and then it's so far away from my ankle. And it does the same thing when I play horseshoes. When I play horseshoes left-handed, my arm swing's actually right next to my leg where it should be. So it's just weird how that happened. Some people think it's because I do bowl two-handed, or because I did bowl two-handed, that's caused that problem. I don't know. I don't really think that's the case. I don't throw the ball two-handed like the kids do, but I did think that if I was going to, work on it, that I might, try to get the quicker footwork so I can get more ball speed. My rev rate's not super high two-handed, but compared to my one-handed, it's way higher, so I get a lot more hook, which is the main reason why I did it. But it's also a matter of learning to control it and being, more accurate and everything like that. And I was actually getting to where I was feeling pretty decent about it, but I always felt that I was better shot maker one-handed, but my shot making one-handed is getting so bad that there are times I felt like, God, it's almost as good two-handed. And my scores two-handed when I was bowling in the PDA 50 tournaments was probably better than my one-handed scores, which is kind of sad. But part of that has to do with the way the lanes are played and all that stuff. But it has to do with, you got to play the lanes right and you're going to execute and stuff. And I just wasn't doing that quite as well as I needed to. But as far as the shoulder injury, I don't know, because the difference is I don't have a huge high backswing even when I bowl one-handed, and my backswing two-handed is really short. But the thing is even though the elbow's bent, the shoulder where the arm's coming back, two-handed, it's to get a high backswing, you got to bend your elbow a lot, which means that arm is actually going to have a higher angle, from the back of the shoulder than you would think. So that may cause more issues with that. I don't know, but it's something I'm going to look into it, and maybe I'm going to put a little bit more effort into, put a little more practice into it. But obviously, if my shoulder's not going to let me bowl, that's not a good thing either. So I want to try to make sure my shoulder heals completely, and that I can go out and do what I want to do. And I would like to be semi-competitive. And the higher rev rates, might give me a chance to do that. It's hard to say, but without any accuracy, it doesn't do you any good either. So it comes with more practice and stuff. So, let's see. Met me 20 years ago, back in 2005, Babylon Bowl, and you had 150 televised appearances. Any tips for bowlers who want to learn how to bowl like you do? Well, it's kind of interesting because my style is kind of, you don't see most of the younger players. They all hook the ball way more than I do. I don't know what happened. So trying to control this mouse left-handed. So let's see. All right. And I got questions on two platforms here, so hang in there with me. So anyway, basically for me, it's not necessarily copying my style, but what I recommend is getting good timing. That's when I do my clinics. That's the thing I really work on is timing. Basically, bowling's a four-step delivery. For a right-hander, you want to get the ball moving just a fraction before your foot moves in that four-step delivery. So I'm right-handed. If I took 4 steps, I would want that ball to move just a fraction, and then I start taking my step, and I want that ball to be down, kind of where my knee's at, in front of me, knee high, I should say, but in front of me on the way down in that first step. When my first foot hits that ground, that right foot hits the ground flat, that the ball is in that position. And the second step, when I hit that left step, that the ball is actually about a ball past my legs. And me, I have a medium-high backswing. It's like my shoulder kind of high. And then the ball gets there in the third step, and then it comes forward. Everything's kind of coming forward on that last step. Mark Baker, who's a great coach and somebody who bowled great on tour, one of the things he likes to look at is the slide. So when you're coming in for the slide, that when your foot comes in for the slide, that your backswing should be almost shoulder high. And he says it doesn't matter whether you got a high backswing or a low backswing. That's about where it should be, and that's the timing coming forward on that. Let's see. So somebody asked me about that I didn't bowl in Hammond and then again at the PGA World Series. Yes, the reason I didn't bowl those is because I had surgery and I'm not going to be bowling for a few months or a bunch of months. So that's kind of how that's going. All right, let's see. I was watching when you had to pull out of the tournament. Yeah, that little sweeper I was talking about. I do have the video, and it hurt you. It hurt quite a lot. So sorry that the volume's not better. Like I said, just turn it up. I don't know why the volume's so low. I'm like 4 feet from my computer, so I wouldn't imagine that that's causing that big of a problem. But I do have a microphone. I could have got that, and I didn't think about that. So let's see. Thanks for all the well wishes on the recovery. I hope so. So far, good. So how about doing lessons in clinics? Very possible. I'm gonna, right now I can't really do anything because I got my arm in my sling. So it's like, I'm my wife is doing a great job of taking care of me. That's all I can say. So let's see. What else? Oh, yeah, the crown. Yeah, the victory crown. Yes, somebody was talking. I was trying to remember the name of the ball. Do you think the two-handed ball had anything to do with both shoulder issues? I don't know. The diagnosis: it was I had several torn ligaments. And it was much worse than they thought. So basically, it was a rotator cuff surgery. I've got like 6 little places where they went in, and attached things and got stuff going. So it's but he showed me a picture of the one tendon that's supposed to cover whatever, and it was completely exposed. It was basically shredded, I guess. So um, it's, based on what he said, it's amazing I was able to bowl as much as I did. So um, let's see. Looks like my backswing not as long. Looks like the backswing not as long as it was not enough time to get the ball under the reason for. Okay, not making any sense there. It's just basically my backswing. Used to do a figure eight years ago, and for whatever reason, it stopped doing the figure eight. It kind of went in the back and never got behind my back. In the backswing, it used to come, it used to go and then come and kind of come back and get behind my back, and then my arm swing would kind of go from the backswing out a little bit to the right. And for some reason, I stopped doing that. I'm not sure exactly why that was. It may have also had something to do with when I changed my grip years ago, because I've got arthritis. In fact, it's kind of bad. My right hand, I'm really noticing it bad because I'm like I haven't been able to make a full grip on my right hand for a couple of years. My index fingers looks is swollen compared to my left hand index finger. Um, it's hard to tell. But it's probably 25-35% larger than my left hand, and it doesn't want to bend at all. It barely bends. But that's the joys of getting older. Okay, let's see what else we got. Next time you're in Vegas, I'll have those shoes with you. Okay. I do practice there when I'm there, and I actually went to a horseshoe tournament. Didn't do very well. I had like 2 good games and 3 bad games. That's the way it goes. Hey, Brandon. I'm doing okay. Just can't pitch horseshoes right now. One of these days, man, you got to get back to the World Tournament. So it's Brandon. I'm not even sure how to pronounce his last name. Tinagiev. But he's one of the top horseshoe pitchers in the world. But he doesn't go to the World Tournament. I know his wife used to work in the forestry division, fighting fires and stuff. So he was, and that's a big time of the year is fighting fires through the summertime. So hard for him to leave his family and do that. Oh, let's see what else we got here. Oh, let's see. Okay. Is Japan Cup 2006 final against BBW your closest 300 game on tour? No, I got over 110 300 games on TV. I mean on PBA, just not on TV. And it wasn't a blower 7. That was a solid 7. Blower 7 would be light in the pocket where the 5-pin goes in front of the 7. At least that's what I call it. That was they actually call that a smash 7. Yeah, that was. I had another one where I think I had the front 10 and left a solid 8 once, and then I did have the front 11 one time and left a weak 10. So I haven't had a 300 on TV. Only had 4 shot against me, so I need to do better. Let's see. Enjoy watching you. A year and a half ago, I tore the muscle in my right arm after surgery. I was out for 4 months. Started bowling with a 10-pound and worked up to 13. You're 80 years old. Well, good for you. Glad to hear that. Hope I'm still walking when I'm 80. Do you have any plans to come to Sacramento or NorCal anytime soon? Not at this moment. I was there, I don't know, a few months. I was back in February. My mom had her 90th birthday, so I was there for that. I'm not sure when next. Maybe around Thanksgiving, but I don't know. We'll see. Haven't thought that far ahead yet. Hope you're doing well. Has been a long time ago, but do you remember that Denny's commercial where I couldn't eat my food? Yeah, that's not going to happen. It was funny too because they sprayed the fork and sprayed the fork and sprayed the fork so the egg would just slide off. It took a while to get that commercial the way they wanted. A lot of people liked it. Me, I don't know. Anyway. Also, we share 2 of the 3 names. It's not the first, but I am not a junior. Yeah, I've never met another I've heard of somebody naming, you know, having the name Walter Ray, but no other Walter Ray Williams besides my dad. And my dad actually went by Ray. Um, my grandfather was Walter Whitman Williams, and my dad's mom was Hazel Ray Williams. They had a son named Rollin, and then they had a second son, and they named him Walter Ray Williams. But because my grandfather was always Walter, my dad always went by Ray. And I've got three older sisters, and when finally had a boy, they named me Junior. Um, I was Junior, but they never called me Junior. My parents have always called me Walter Ray, which is what I like to go by, which is why you see my name, Walter Ray Williams Jr. When I sign my autograph, I always sign my full name. I shouldn't say I always sign. When I'm signing an autograph for somebody to read it, lately when I signed it for the PBA and scorecards, I just put WRWJr. Uh, and it's funny because I guess I could go by WR. People think that'd be shorter, and it actually takes longer to say WR than it does to say Walter Ray. More syllables. But anyway, um, where am I? Oops, go away. Go away. Oh, stop. Oh, come on. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, what determines how many steps you take when bowling two-handed? Oh, well, normally I basically take like 4 steps with a slight shuffle step. So it's like a baby step and then 4 steps. However, sometimes when I'm bowling two-handed, especially in a tournament, and the lane conditions break down, or that's what they call it. It's not the lane's not the break. The lanes didn't break down, but the lane condition starts to wear away, and the lanes start hooking more, and so you got to move more for the right-handers. They move further left, further left, further left, and you see that especially with the guys on tour, because they hook the ball so much. And basically, it's like I used to be able to drift left around the ball return years ago. Used to do it pretty well, and I found that it was a lot easier to get in front of the ball return and go to 3 steps. Now, if the ball return is really long, that makes it a little more challenging. But most of the time, most ball returns, I can do a 3-step approach, and I do it pretty decently. I'm not good as the kids on tour at it, but I'm decent at it. The problem is I don't have the ball speed that the kids do. Um, but I don't lose a lot of ball speed going from the 4-step to 3-step. But when I go to 3 steps, now what I do is I wait for the ball to get down basically to my leg area, and then I start my step. And my first step is really short. It's probably less than a foot long. And then my second step's probably like a foot and a half or 2 feet, and then I get my slide. So I try to generate as much speed as I can, but basically I want to get things going so that the finish is basically like the finish of a normal delivery. And I do that one-handed once in a while, just not very often because um, lately, because I've gotten decent bowling two-handed, when it calls for playing that far inside, normally it's better for me to bowl two-handed. Interestingly enough, though, when I did bowl that tournament in Houston in December, where I did actually bowl it, kind of where I started the shoulder issue, and that's actually on my. You can go back and watch the YouTube channels on that. But we bowled 12 games in one day, and actually the day before in qualifying, I was bowling one-handed, and then like I don't know, we had 8 games of qualifying. It might have been game 5, and I decided, even though I just shot like a 220 game, I decided to try two-handed, and I actually shot 300 that first game bowling two-handed. And then the next day we bowled 12 games, and I'm playing so far left. I'm trying to play around 7th arrow, which I'm not great at because I don't loft the ball and I don't have the ball speed the kids do. And the lanes are just hooking so much, and I finally just decided this is just too much. And I said, so the last game of this round, I went back to one-handed and shot a 250 something, pulling one-handed playing 6th arrow. That's how much the lanes were hooking. So, and because you had to throw the ball hard, that may have been part of the issue that caused my shoulder issue. But I'm sure it was already straining before that, and I just didn't realize it. So that's the reason why I would change my steps. Now, one-handed, normally I take 5 steps, and every once in a while, when I want to hook the ball a little bit more, I'll go to 4 steps. And I can throw the ball just as hard with 5 steps, but for me, it kind of reiterates that's what I'm trying to do. I want to throw the ball a little slower, so I just scoot up a little bit, and I can kind of concentrate on trying to get the ball speed down just a little tiny bit to let that ball hook a little bit more. And normally when I try to hook the ball more, I get a little bit slower and slower. And so it's just kind of that kind of a thing. And then if I really wanted to get really slow, which I really don't do anymore, I used to do it years ago, I'd move up like 3 or 4 feet on the foul line and just take an itty bitty step. When I do my clinics and stuff, I'll show people doing that, but I hardly ever do that because now the ball speed's really slow and the ball just has to hit right. And if there was lots and lots and lots of oil, sometimes it might work, but for the most part, whoops, oh, there we go. Thought I lost the video there for a second. But for the most part, like I said, I've gotten pretty decent at two-handed, and when the lanes call for playing that deep inside line with a lot of oil, it actually works much better. I think I've got three 300 games bowling two-handed in PBA 50 tournaments. Playing that fifth, sixth arrow kind of reaction. So let's see. Just bowled a tournament at Rockland Bowl near Sacramento, and that house has garbage lanes. Okay. I bowled a tournament there. It was in Rockland. I'm not sure which one, but it was the Bolero Bowl in Center. They had a little tournament. I actually went. My mom had her birthday that weekend, and I thought, well, I brought my bowling balls. I didn't know if I was going to bowl or not, but I just brought like 2 bowling balls with me, and I went and bowled this tournament. And I actually bowled pretty decent. That also is on my YouTube archives if you want. Interesting match play tournament. Do you still get in touch with Park the Bone? Yeah. And PBA, when you bowled with him in PBA games when you and him compete each other. Yeah, I mean, Parker and I are good friends. We met, I was just bowling tournaments in May and June, in early June, so I just saw him then. But yeah, he knows about my shoulder thing and stuff, so. Big fan since '86. Who was the most competitive bowler aside from you of the 1980s era? Love your form. Well, I mean, Mike Albee was, I think, voted the 80s bowler of the decade, so I guess it would be him. Or was it Earl Anthony? One of the two. Well, and Earl only bowled like 4 years. He was player of the year 81, 82, 83, and then he quit bowling. And he bowled one tournament in '84, won that one. So if he'd have bowled a few more years, he would probably been bowler of the decade in the 80s to go along with the 70s. Let's see, Steve from Elmira and Brownsville Lanes. I don't know where that's at. Linda, Tony, Maurice. Oh, okay. I know Tony. Family. Tony used to be, I think, from Wisconsin, I think. And I think he's down in South Carolina, but hopefully I'm the right guy I'm thinking of. Horseshoes are better for knees and back, much less money. Okay. What would a top pro average in a house shot league? Some of these guys, they'll average 250 in league. Yeah, I cannot strike that much. I never have been able to strike that much. I even when I was player of the year many times, I never averaged over 250 in a tournament. I hit the pocket a lot. I just never struck that much. I would. A couple of years ago, well, okay, so in the last, I don't know how many years, 7, 8 years, I started bowling league again when I got back. Because before that, I was traveling so much, it didn't make any sense. And even as much as I don't travel as much as I used to, I still miss a lot of weeks of league because I'm traveling, doing, bowling here, bowling there, doing stuff. So anyway, when I started bowling again in league, I thought, I'm going to bowl two-handed in league. And then I pulled a groin muscle, God, I don't know, 5 years ago. And when I came back the next year, I decided to bowl one-handed in league. And I was disappointed because I only averaged 239 in league on a house shot. So, but again, I'm not as good as I used to be. Most pros don't really care for house shots, even though they might score well on them. I personally don't like house shots. I'd rather see a lot more oil. And I do bowl two-handed in the league, even though, even then, if I was bowling one-handed, I still really don't care for the house shots that we have around here, and that's most places. So, let's see. How do you maintain composure when things got intense on the PGA Tour or on the horseshoe course? Also, how do you practice for the difference in that? I kind of worked into it. with horseshoes, it was different because in horseshoes I got so good so quick when I was very young. Um, it was never really an issue way back when. It actually became more of an issue later on that I kind of had issues with the pressure and stuff. And it's kind of another thing that a psychologist would have to go into with me. Um, with bowling, I you know I took a different approach. In horseshoes, at one time I was so good that the only time I wouldn't win was when I played bad and my opponents played good because I was kind of that much better. Kind of like Alan Francis is these days. He's so much better than the rest of the players that for him not to win is really unusual. Um, and at one point, I was kind of as good as he is now, but he's been a lot more consistent at it than I have. So it's definitely mental in both categories, bowling or pitching horseshoes. But in bowling, I kind of realized, especially when I got good enough to go out on tour, that there was all these other really good players, and I was not one of the top. I was in like the top 50 when I first went on a tour, so I was decent. I made some money, and then you know, over a couple of years, I got better and better, and then I'm finally Player of the Year, which I really, really wasn't necessarily expecting it to happen, but it did. And I thought, well, once I got that level, I thought, I want to stay there. But staying number one is not simple either. But even when I was ranked number one through all the different years of my career, I never felt like none of these guys can beat me. I never felt that way. I knew the competition was very good, and I just had to basically go out and do the best I can, and basically just keep knocking on the door, and hopefully things are going to happen. And that was kind of my approach in bowling. Where in horseshoes, it was a little bit different. Where when I felt when I was pitching my best, that it was kind of me that messed up, and or somebody else did a pitched a great game or whatever, or tournament. But for the most part, when I was pitching my best, I had to pitch bad to get beat, and then Alan Francis came along. So let's see. Do you use the arrows for your target? Yes, I do. And do you have a focal point you use down lane near the break point? No, I don't. It would be great to hear about your targeting system. No, basically, very simple. Where my feet are, where I start, where my target is at the arrows, and then hopefully where the ball finishes up. And based on, I like to use the arrows because the ball doesn't hook very much in those first 15 feet. A lot of guys think it does, but it really doesn't. I mean, I know some lane conditions it will, but that's really kind of unusual. Um, but So I like to get that feedback from my eyes and my body saying, "Oh, I threw a good shot," and I get that feedback of my ball going over my target. Back in the day when I used to be able to hit my target a lot, I don't hit my target as well as I used to. But it's that was kind of for me. And if where I started, and I basically would walk the line, even though I would drift different amounts, or depending on where I was on the lane. My drift was fairly similar, and I wasn't necessarily worried about where I finished on my drift. But as far as I could, where my starting position was, where my target was at the arrows, and then hopefully where the ball finished. And where the ball finished, I would make my adjustments based off of how I felt I threw the ball. And you got to be honest with yourself. A lot of people aren't honest with themselves. They think everything else is the lanes, and sometimes it is the lanes, but it's I think it's unfortunately too easy for bowlers to blame everything on the lane condition and stuff. And I do that myself these days, unfortunately, because I don't bowl as well as I used to. But it's like, man, I can get the ball to do that. I can get the ball, and these guys look like they can get to do this, do that, and I'm like, so it's a little bit frustrating. But obviously, the other thing is, I'm not as good as I used to be, and I know that. Let's see. One of my favorite balls back then was the BVL LT Project Johnny Petraglia green and gold swirl. I bowled at 183 average back in January 2020 challenge. Okay. What was the longest distance you've driven to bowl in a tournament? Well, I've driven across the country to bowl in tournaments. I most of the time I drive to tournaments. I'll fly once in a while, but back when the tour, when I bought my very first RV, we had a tournament in Texas, and the next one was in Miami. Well, I must have not bowled well in the tournament in Texas because I got home I don't know if I flew home or drove home or whatever, got home, bought a truck and a trailer, a 40-foot trailer, and then drove to Miami. So that's like 3,000 miles. So how's that? That was back in 1991 or something like that. Let's see. Sweeper this Sunday. Can you make it? No. I've got a sling on my arm. I won't be bowling for about 6 months. That's why I'm kind of doing this. Do you have an opinion on the future of urethane? Um, I don't understand the big deal about urethane. The reactive balls, they're urethane. The difference is that they have an additive added to the urethane, so they hook more. The urethane balls hook less than the reactive balls, so I don't see why that's an issue. I'm very confused as to why all these people hate urethane. They don't understand urethane actually helps the lane get better most of the time. Now, granted, if you happen to be following guys that hook the ball way more than you do, and they're using urethane hooking the ball way more than you do, yeah, it's going to make the lane look tougher for you. But if they're using reactive, it's going to make it tougher for you also. So I don't understand this notion that urethane should be banned. I don't get it, and I totally disagree with it. I don't agree with the way the PBA has handled their issue with the urethane. All they had a hardness rule. All they had to do is enforce it. They never enforced it. If they'd enforced the hardness rule, they never would have had any issues. They just chose not to enforce the hardness rule. Why? I don't know. That's another discussion completely. But I disagreed with them making a specific rule for a, a specific type of bowling ball, and their definition of what urethane, it actually incorporates other bowling balls. And then the PGA went to going with only balls from the last 2 years, which I also disagree with. But I'm not on the tour anymore, so it doesn't really matter to me. But I disagree with that. And so we used urethane balls back in the 80s. So they're saying those balls shouldn't be legal, and that just doesn't make any sense to me. I don't. If I had a ball from 1986, it's going to hook so small amount compared to the balls today, and I just I don't get it. I just don't understand it. I mean, if you want, let's just have one bowling ball. Just make plastic balls. We can go back to, using an eighth of the oil that they use on the lanes today. I just don't agree with those kinds of concepts. Okay, let's see. Do you remember the Brunswick zone balls that you rolled in the PBA? Mine's from years ago with the Brunswick True Nirvana. Very good hooking ball with good friction. I From like 95 to 2000, the end of 2000, I was on the Brunswick staff and I used their bowling balls, and I did very well with them. I won a lot of titles using those bowling balls. Unfortunately, my memory is not super specific. It's not super great on all the different bowling balls that I used back then. I do remember what was it? I can't remember the name of the ball. It was, it wasn't the Rhino, and it wasn't the Quantums. I did okay with those, but it was the Danger Zone, the Black Danger Zone. That ball, I did very well. I think I won 5 tournaments one year. I don't know if I won every tournament with that particular ball, but I know I did very well with that ball. My favorite ball of all time was the Crush R from Ebonite back in 1993, when I won 7 titles that year. But again, I didn't use the reactive ball, and I think I won once with the Crush, which was a urethane ball, and I won one term with a plastic ball. And I think I was the only guy in the top 5 to use a plastic ball, which is amazing because I throw the ball straighter than most of these guys, but I was using a plastic ball, and I bowled great the whole week and led the tournament, and I'm like, I'm going to use a plastic ball, I ended up winning. So it's I don't know, it is what it is. Let's see, get some more questions over here. Let's see. Okay. Hmm. Ugh. Okay, time to write a book. Yeah, might be. That's it. Did I watch the 60 World Series of Bowling? I did watch it. Um, where is your favorite place to bowl or most memorable tournament in New York State? Hmm. I enjoyed bowling in Rochester at Marcel's Olympic Bowl. They had 80 Lane Center right across the street from the right across the street from the airport. Unfortunately, they ended up tearing it down. I had a couple unusual things there. I think one tournament, I had my most strikes in a row ever at a PBA national tournament, 28 strikes in a row. It was only won 300, so it was over 3 games. Um, and in the same tournament, I think I had 28 frames in a row without a double. Very odd. And why I would know that, I don't know how I remember that, but I just remember that. And then one of the TV shows I made at Marcel's, um, scores were a little low, but and I started in the first match and then managed to win all 4 games. And I think I left 14 pin pins. You know, so um, kind of helped that the scores were not really high. But yeah, I enjoyed bowling there. Um, okay, it was great to see Jack win. Yeah, Jack's a great bowler. Um, I was a little surprised that he decided not to bowl in Jackson, but he's got a pro shop to run in the Buffalo area. So when are you coming? When are you going to come to Michigan for any tournament? Well, it's going to be probably a year. So because I'm indisposed for about 6 months. Been watching you bowl in your Wednesday league for around 6 years. Wednesdays won't be the same this year. Yeah, I'm not sure how that's going to work out. I was going to bowl with Carol Teal, who I bowled with last year, and we are going to get somebody else. And I let her know that I wouldn't be able to bowl for 3 months. So I don't know if she's going to get somebody to bowl for a few months and I'll take over after. I have no idea. I'm not really worried about that. I might, sub a little bit. I don't know. How did Deadeye was first mentioned to you? I'm guessing he's like, how did my nickname? So when I was 10, playing horseshoes, I went to the World Horseshoe Tournament. And at that time, the junior division, which was 17 and under, the qualifying rounds were 50 shoes. So you pick 50 shoes by yourself, and then they had scorekeepers, making sure they had one on each end to make sure that the scores were valid and everything. And I was pretty good at 10 years old. So I kind of hard to believe because at that point there was never any kids that young that good. And I had out of the 50 shoes, I had 45 ringers, which was really really good. I mean, even for me, that was really good. I came within one ringer and 1 point of breaking the record at that time. And that year, then after the qualifying round, one of the statisticians put Deadeye on a little piece of paper and then pinned it to the back of my shirt. So that was my nickname for playing horseshoes. And then I ended up finishing second that year, averaging 78% at 10 years old from the 30-foot distance. Well, the 27 feet is the foul line for the junior boys, which is still that distance. The men's distance is 37 feet for the foul line, 40 feet. So I was very good when I was very young, and then I actually won it the next year when I was 11. I was the youngest to win it at the time, and I broke the record for high average. I averaged 86% the next year, and then I averaged 89% the next year. And the next year I averaged 78% because I broke my finger the day before the tournament. And that's when I first started playing left-handed. So, let's see, where am I? Are you still bowling? I was until about a month ago. Oh, come back. What's my most memorable PBA win? Well, it has to be the first one. I mean, until you win your first tournament, you don't know what's going to happen. And I'd been having I'd had a couple of good seasons, and then in 1986, I started making a lot of TV shows, but I wasn't winning. And then finally, I won my first tournament. And I wasn't even expecting it. I think I was seeded number 4 in the tournament, and there was 3 left-handers in the top: Steve Cook, John Gant, and Hugh Miller. I don't know if I got the order right. And anyway, and my first match was against Mats Carlson, who's from Sweden. And fortunately, I locked him up by throwing a clutch Brooklyn. And then the lefties two of the lefties kind of struggled a little bit. Hugh Miller bowled a good game, but Steve Cook shot like 165 against me in the title match. So that gave me a win. And the funny thing is the next week I led the tournament and was, going for back-to-back wins. And unfortunately, one of the players on the TV show, I found out years later, he had a shoe that was leaving residue on the approaches. And when I came back, because you did practice, I think you did like 6 practice shots way back then. And my very first shot, I stuck and actually fell over. Hands are in the oil in the lanes. And I'm like, what's going on? I basically had to walk to the line and try to throw the ball. And I ended up, we had a very exciting match. I was bowling against Mark Baker, who was a good friend of mine and a great bowler back then. He was going for his first title and got them to 10 frame, and I needed Mark to beat him. And I thought I threw a decent shot, got a little firm, I guess, and had the 2-8-10, the 2 fell, so I had the 8-10, and making an 8-10 is almost impossible. I've actually made it once in my life. I didn't make it then, so Mark won the tournament. But yeah, the first title, I mean, that's always going to be the one. Let's see. Not on a house shot, it kills it. Okay. I'm not sure what that is in reference to. Let's see. Glad to see you live. I'll miss you while your shoulder heals. This live session is great. Oh, good. Hope you do this often. Be nice if you would use your knowledge as an announcer or host tournament. Yeah, I can agree with you, but apparently they don't want me to tell my side of the stories or have me as a commentator. All right, let's see. Okay, back over here. Okay. Have you bowled on string pins yet? What's your opinions on it? I have bowled on string pins. So last year, the PBA actually had the PBA 50 regional on string pins, and at that time they weren't going to sanction it because they weren't going to sanction it, even though all the other rules and everybody's bowling the same conditions. But when the PBA ran the tournament, my understanding is that they've actually since then given a sanction to that tournament. I actually won that tournament, but it's the only time I've ever bowled decent on string pins. But for me, those string pins, the sanctioned ones, it's like you got to throw a little better shots to get strikes. You have to hit the pocket really good or have a little better ball speed. My ball speed's a little low, so pins don't fly around, and on string pins they fly around even less. So my success on string pins has really been only one time, and it was that first tournament. It was just kind of odd, and I ended up winning it. But I understand. I've been told that they've actually made that tournament officially a title, but I don't know because they've never sent me any correspondence in that regard or not. So let's see. So I don't think string pins that bad. I think it could be better. I'd like to be part of that. I think I have a little bit of knowledge in it. I've got a degree in physics. I know a little tiny bit about stuff like that, especially being a good bowler. It would be nice if the string pins, the pins flew around just as well as the other pins did. The biggest problem with string pins is that the strings get tangled up. But other than that, it's going to be the future of bowling. Some people don't like it, but some people didn't like, they didn't like urethane lanes. They didn't like synthetic lanes. They didn't like, urethane balls. They didn't like reactive balls. A lot of people don't like change. Change is part of the world. If you're a proprietor, you might understand that kind of stuff a little bit better. I'm not a proprietor, but I got some friends who are proprietors, and the expenses that are involved in having the free fall pins is a lot. And the problem is getting mechanics, and these machines that are in most of these places are 50, 60 years old these days, and they just need so much love and care and work, and it's very challenging. So when you can get a machine that takes a lot less care and works most of the time flawlessly, it just makes a lot more sense. And the expenses are way down. They save a lot more money by putting those things in. So if that also allows you to continue to have a bowling center in your neighborhood, I think that's a better thing than saying, well, this is too expensive. We got to close the bowling center down. So some people don't understand those options, but a lot of people don't understand a lot of things anyway. So let's see. Also, do you still have your name on? Still have your name ball Brunswick made? Back in the late '90s, they did make a bowling ball with my signature on it, but that's the only time they've done that. Let's see. Can you compare the hammerhead to the sensor solid? Sorry, have, I may have drilled them, but I didn't get a chance to use them, and now I'm out for 6 months. So by the time I get a chance to use those balls, they're not going to be obsolete, but they're going to have new, better things. So we'll see how that goes. Let's see. Did you take extra satisfaction in beating Pete Weber all those times on TV? I take satisfaction beating anybody on TV. I didn't like when anybody beat me. That's just the way it is. We all want to win, and the fact that Pete is as great as he is, and my record against him on TV is ridiculous. We only bowled each other 10 times on TV. We bowled 6 times for a title. I was very fortunate to win all 6 of those matches. If we had 6 more matches, it's very possible he'd win those 6 matches. Right now, of course, now my shoulder's messed up, but even before that, he's been bowling much better than I have the last couple of years. So, but Pete's a great bowler, and you take satisfaction beating anybody. That's just the way it is. Years ago, you and Aletto bowled in 1997 in New Jersey, and you were the champion. Okay. I know I bowled in New Jersey. I think I've won twice there. I couldn't. I honestly can't remember the exact details. I'm guessing that might have been when I used the Helix to win. But I know one year I used the Helix to win in New Jersey. Another time I beat Steve Jaros at Rutgers, where they moved to finals. Let's see. Are you gonna make it back to Smyrna in September? I don't know if I'm going to be in Smyrna or not. I won't be bowling there. If they want me to come up and do a clinic or something, I'll do that. But as far as me bowling, I will not be bowling there. No. Do you remember the 300 game that you bowled against Norm Duke? I sure wanted you to win, but Duke dominated it. Okay, I think you messed that up. Yeah, Duke bowled a 300 against me. I do remember that. Yeah, and he jumped up on top of me. Fortunately, he's not a huge guy, so that wasn't a big issue. It was kind of funny because we're bowling on the shark pattern, which you're not supposed to be able to play way out, and he was playing like right up 3, and bowled a great game against me. Like I said, I've only had 3. I've had 4 300s bowled against me on TV. 3 were in actual competition. 1 was a special match. Wes Malott bowled one against me, and he bowled one against Parker Bone. So Parker and I both had the distinguished honor of having 300 bowled against us numerous times. But unfortunately for me, I never did bowl a 300 on TV. Parker has, so I guess I'm not very good. Let's see. Joe from Joe's Pro Shop in Feasterville talked about you today. Oh, okay. Feasterville. That's in Pittsburgh. That's not Pittsburgh, Philadelphia. So Joey Pants. Yeah. Tell Joey hi. Not a big fan of my bowling two-handed, but he doesn't mind the string pins. So I think the real question is, when are you going to do for 6 months? This has to be the longest you've been away from bowling in 4 years. Yes, it will be the longest I've been. Back in the old days when we bowled year round on tour, we would have 30-something tournaments a year, that were on TV. Some were cable, some were on national TV. So we would have like 16 weeks in the winter, and we'd have a few weeks off, and like 6 or 8 weeks in the spring, and then 6 or 8 weeks in the summer, and then 6 weeks in the fall, or something like that. So there would be a few weeks here, a few weeks there, maybe a month here, a month there. And I would actually not bowl for about a month at some of those times. And then when the tour was getting ready, about a week before the tour was going to start, I'd go practice about an hour a day for about a week. That's how I got ready for the tour. But I was also pitching a lot of horseshoes back then. I think that helped keep my arm swing going the way it was. And I credit my good bowling to my horseshoes, because I was so good at horseshoes when I was young. I got better at bowling without putting as much time into it as somebody else might have. I really, really didn't bowl as many games a week until I went out on tour. And you start bowling 40, 50 games a week. Where a lot of these other guys, they bowled 75, 100 games a week before they got on tour, and I never really did that. But I credit my accuracy to my playing horseshoes and stuff because I used to be really, really, really good at that. I'm just good. So yes, he drilled my ball today, and he talked about the clinic he all did when he opened up. Yeah, yeah, Joey. I did a clinic when he opened up his pro shop there. Took over from Vince Mazzani, and Vince has moved down here. Yeah, I've done clinics all over the country, and Joe helped me set that up. And I don't know, I'm gonna have to look into maybe doing some more clinics and stuff because not bowling. Of course, the thing is, I'm not making a lot of money. I don't make a lot of money bowling anyway these days, so it might be better that I just start kind of heading more into that teaching kind of thing to help help pay my bills and stuff. What happened to your shoulder? Must be missed. Yeah, if you go back and you can watch the beginning of the video, I talked about it. I basically, I guess I hurt it bowling, and then I tweaked it last month when I was in Las Vegas. I picked up a suitcase that was a little on the heavy side. It wasn't super heavy. It wasn't, 35 pounds maybe or something like that, but I picked it up the wrong way and moved it. And I'm like, I felt the twinge. I'm like, oh, this is not good. I went and bowled a little pot games, and then at the end of the second game, it was like, oh, this is not good. So I knew I wasn't going to be able to bowl much after that. So. Let's see. Which show do you think you bowled the best on? The 2010 Masters win over Barnes comes to mind when he looked like he was sucking lemon after he finished each swing. That was one of my better games. It was kind of funny because I bowled threw a horrible first shot, and then the last 11 were like just dead flush. It was one of the better games. The match I bowled against Pete Weber in 2006, another good one on TV. I've actually had a couple of good games on TV. They weren't all perfect or whatever. And that's the funny thing about bowling. You can throw a great shot and not get a strike, and you can throw a bad shot and get a strike. So it's kind of a combination of luck. But the more better shots you throw, the better chance you got. So that's kind of my theory. Keep it in the pocket. Keep it in the pocket. Let's see. You've probably been asked it before, but did you have a favorite bowler when you were growing up? Well, I just like to watch the guys. I wouldn't say I had one favorite. I remember watching, back in the early '70s, and watching Don Johnson and Johnny Petraglia, Wayne Zahn, and then later on it was Earl Anthony and Mark Roth and Marshall Holman, and it was a pleasure to be able to bowl against those guys. And even though Earl Anthony was very limited, I did get to bowl against Mark and Marshall, and got to know them a little bit. Even got to know Earl a little bit. But yeah, I enjoyed watching guys, and even today, I love watching the guys bowl on TV, and bowl in tournaments. They do things I can't do. I remember when I first saw EJ when he was like 18 years old, and I'm like, oh my God, this kid's unbelievable. When I first saw Tommy Jones when he was 16 or 17 or 18 years old, it was just amazing to see these young guys, and then later on to see where they get to. And I remember watching Jacob Butcher the first time I saw him bowl. I'm like, what is he doing? And then you're like, wow, he just keeps striking. It's like so. Yeah, I enjoy watching the good players. Watching Jason Bomani. I just like watching good competition. That's really what, for me, I'd rather just good competition. I like watching it. Let's see. Here's a fun question. Do you remember the PBA Skills Challenge from the days of ESPN? I remember them. Really wasn't a big fan of them. I'm more interested in real bowling, so to speak. We're going for score, and some of that stuff was, it was okay, but it was it definitely wasn't something that I was big into. And I could do a few things guys could do, and there's a few things that guys did that I couldn't do. So, do you suitcase your releases? Not really. I mean, I don't have a really strong release, so I guess my release is kind of closer to a suitcase release than not. So let's see. how much has the equipment changed since you first started your bowling career? Well, I first became a PBA member back in 1980. So back then, the main bowling balls were the plastic balls, and I don't think the urethane ball had come out yet. I think the angle came out in 1981. So then the urethane balls came out, and then in the early 90s, the reactor balls came out, and then then they did different cores and stuff. I remember the very first time that the Ultra Angle came out, and AMF was not a super huge popular brand by the tour players anyway, but when it came out, the ball flared, and the guys on tour did not want to do that. That was like they just didn't want to touch that. That's like that was like a bad thing. And now everybody wants a ball that flares. Well, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, but more often than not, they like the ball to flare because it does, continues hooking more, a little bit more on the back end. So it's kind of a you know progression over things, and it's amazing how the mindset is of certain players like, oh, that's I can't do that, and then you get the opposite thing where guys like, oh, I don't like urethane. I'm like, well, that's what we had way back when. So we, and even older guys that are my kind of my age, some of those guys don't like to use urethane. They're like, well, that's what we used way back in the 80s and early 90s, so but the difference is now they like to see that ball curve, and they don't want to see that ball hook and then set, going in the pocket. So bowling is not just one thing. It's the same, but it's different, if that makes any sense. And it has to do with bowling balls. It has to do with oil in the lane. It has to do with the lane conditions. It has to do with how much oil's on the lane. It has to do with how the guys throw the ball. The guys today, the rev rates are so much higher than they were 40 years ago. It's ridiculous. I mean, when I first came out on tour, my rev rate was kind of in the middle of the pack, and I loved the lanes when they broke down and had to play fifth or sixth arrow. I was good at that back then. I didn't like the fresh lanes, and then I learned to bowl better on the fresh lane patterns, and I got to be a better bowler. And so nowadays, though, the guys all hook the ball so much. My rev rate's like on the very low end, even on the senior tour, and it's just been a progression of everything. So, let's see. When you were on tour, did you have a favorite house? The bowling center that I had probably the most success was Eastway Lanes in Erie, Pennsylvania, and it was also fun bowling there because it was it was a big town. It was a nice sized city, but they didn't have any other major sports there, and they were really good about. They loved their bowling. So I remember I was in my RV and I'm watching the local morning show on one of the stations, and they broke in on that national morning show to show Bob Learn in the 10th frame going for a 300 the very first game of the tournament. I'm like, this is awesome. That's the kind of respect that we got in Erie, Pennsylvania. It was always packed there. The very first tournament that we had in the modern era, in the 1993 or what was 96, we had the very first arena finals in Erie, and it was the most fun I ever had not winning a tournament. But I had a great career bowling there. I think what was it, 8 years that I bowled there. I think I made the top 5, 7 of the 8 years. The only year I didn't make it was the year Bob Learn broke the record and shot 300 on TV. Scores are too high for me that week. Let's see. Have you ever bowled with Charlie Tapp? To Mike Scroggins or Tom Baker? I bowled. My first TV show was against Tom Baker, and I bowled against Charlie Tapp many times. Never on TV. Mike Scroggins, I bowled against him on TV. I'm trying to remember. I couldn't tell you if I beat him or he beat me, but I think it was like 2005 or 6. We bowled each other. I honestly couldn't tell you if I beat him. I'm kind of thinking he beat me. Mike was a very good bowler. How did you develop your spare system? I think I read a stat which said you went 1 or 2 PBA seasons without missing a single pin. Basically, everybody's different. Okay, I do something unique. when I'm playing on the lanes, when I'm going straighter and I'm playing more on the right side of the lane, I'm not going to drift very much. When I start moving towards the left part of the lane, now it's like my mental part is I want to get that ball to hook more, but I also want to get around the ball return. So I learned to drift around the ball return. So the further left I go in the lane, the more I would drift left. So when I shoot a 7-pin, I might not drift at all, where my feet end up, where my left foot slides and where I start might be the same board. When I'm, playing over third arrow, shooting my 7-pin. And when I play on the 10-pin, I'm going to drift about 4 or 5 boards to the left, which is not as much as I drift when I'm playing 20 or 25 trying to hook the ball. I'm going to drift about 10 or 15 boards left. And it's just kind of the way I see the lane and everything. So it's not really, my system is try to make, my system basically is throw the ball as straight as possible. I get a little lazy on that, especially the last couple of years. And my spare shooting's not been as good as it used to be. But basically, throw the ball fairly straight. A straight ball is going to go straight whether you're on a 20-foot pattern or a 50-foot pattern. It doesn't matter. And that's why I try to explain to people when I'm doing my clinics and stuff. I see people all the time hook the ball at the 4 and a 7. That's fine on a house shot. When you're not on a house shot, though, now you got to be a lot more precise. And it's like, okay, now am I bowling on a 35-foot pattern? Am I bowling on a 46-foot pattern? How much is that ball going to hook? Where is it going to hook in this part of the lane? Is it going to hook in this part of the lane? So if you're hooking a ball at something going across the lane like that, yeah, on the certain lane conditions, yeah, you might have a little bit more advantage doing that. But for me, I don't have to worry about where, oh, gee, I'm playing on this pattern. I need to stand here. This pattern I need to stand here. This pattern I need to stand here. I don't have to worry about that. So I go fairly straight at most of my spares, and it kind of takes lane out of play. And to me, that makes a lot more sense. And that stat was kind of not 100% because they didn't keep track of qualifying. I kept track of all my stuff that year. I had my little handheld device that I kept track of stuff. And I think I missed 7 10 pins or 7 single pins or whatever that year. But for whatever reason, I didn't miss any match play. And that's what they kept track of. They kept track of match play, which is kind of odd because, when we were bowling matches, you get to the 10th frame and it's like you want to get lined up. So you might not shoot at a 10 pin to, throw a strike ball. But I guess when I was doing that, I was bowling well enough. I wasn't worried about trying to get lined up or something like that. So I shot at all my spares and made them in match plays like 460 or something. But like I said, in qualifying, I actually missed like 7 that year. So stat's not 100% accurate. Let's see. I saw the film Pin Gods a little while back and really enjoyed it. Do you know whatever happened to Tony Wilson and Sonny Pavlicek, or do you remember bowling with either of those guys? I do remember them because we were in that documentary together, and it's a great documentary. It was taken, I think it was basically taped during the 1993-94 seasons, kind of. And yeah, Tony and they picked 2 guys, Tony and Sonny. They were from New Jersey. They were good bowlers. They were going to go out on tour and kind of show what life was like for a couple of those guys, and then a couple other guys, myself and David Ozio, who were kind of star players, and show kind of the differences and what tour was like back then. I thought it was an excellent documentary. Tony bowled a little bit after that. Sonny kind of didn't bowl very much on tour after that season. Tony had an unfortunate thing happen where he qualified really well in one of the tournaments, but for some reason didn't check his ball in properly and actually got disqualified, which is really a shame. But Tony was a pretty decent bowler. Unfortunately, just bowling out on tour and staying out there is not a simple thing. There's so many good bowlers, and to stay out there and to be super good is very challenging. And then of course now a lot of people are more familiar with the League of Ordinary Gentlemen, which was done in like 2003, 2004 kind of year. Then more recently, there's been not a remake, but a mockumentary, which is called Any Given Saturday Afternoon. I recommend anybody who likes bowling, watches a tour, to watch all 3 of those. Watch the Pin Gods, which is from back in the 90s, and then the 2004 one, or 2003, which is League of Ordinary Gentlemen. and the mockumentary, Any Given Saturday Afternoon, which actually makes fun of the League of Ordinary Gentlemen. They make fun of me, make fun of Pete Weber, they make fun of Wayne Webb. And I thought it was absolutely hilarious, and they're making fun of me. It's like 25 minutes long, but to get a good, you know, you'll appreciate some of the jokes a little bit more if you watch the rewatch or watch the League of Ordinary Gentlemen, and then watch the comedy, the mockumentary, Any Given Saturday Afternoon, and I think it was done by produced by Lorne Michaels, who's a Saturday Night Live fame. So, do you remember when you and Nelson Burton did a tip of the week? I don't remember specifically doing the tip of the week, but I do remember doing at least one with Nelson. Obviously, he was the main guy on TV way back when. So, could you walk us through your process of getting lined up? Okay. Well, I'm not sure if you're talking about are you talking about when I'm trying to get lined up during a tournament, or if I'm already lined up and I get on the approach? So getting lined up in a tournament, I'm like, in practice, you're throwing shots and trying to figure out where your ball's going to go and stuff. And basically based on how my ball hooks or where it doesn't hook and everything, I decide I'm going to use this ball. I'm going to try to play this part of the lane. I'm going to try to throw the ball this certain way. And then, make corrections or adjustments based on that in a tournament. And in the tournament, since we're bowling 6 or 8 games in a row, and the lanes change quite a bit, you got to do different things. You can't always do the same thing that you started with. So you normally got to move a little bit and change a little bit. Normally, straighter's better than the fresh, and hooking the ball is better later on in the block. Isn't 100% that way? Normally, that's the rule of thumb. For me, though, once I am, when I'm getting ready to bowl, I'm like, I know where my feet want to go, and I kind of line up my feet on the insides. So I'm like, kind of get my feet. I got my feet touching each other, the shoes touching each other, and I kind of line up on the inside. And then I'm looking at my target, and within a second or two, I'm going. When I first came out on tour, the 3 best bowlers in the world, Earl Anthony, Mark Roth, Marshall Holman, they were nice and quick. They knew what they were doing. They got up there and bowled. Bowlers today are so slow, it's unbelievable. I don't know how guys can stand there for 5-10 seconds and not do anything. That just doesn't make any sense to me. You should already have an idea what you're doing. Get up there, bowl. I was crossing with one of the younger collegiate bowlers this year, one of the sweepers, and he's like taking 15 seconds to wipe the oil off his ball, and then he got to the approach and he's waiting 10 or 15 seconds to throw the ball, and I'm like, do you have aspirations to go on tour? He goes, yeah. This is, well, you might want to speed it up because they have a 20-second shot clock. You're going to get fined every shot. And I understand, a lot of these universities and colleges and stuff, they teach everybody how to, a pre-shot routine and stuff, but I think they've just gone way overboard with it. You know what you want to do? Go up, do it. Anyway, let's see. Thanks for wishing me speedy recovery. Just got back from the Sport League bowled in the 44-foot Billy Hardwick finished period. Oh, nice. The last couple times I bowled in the Billy Hardwick was not very impressive for me. Don't watch Kingpin. Set the tour back 10 years. I was not a big fan of all those other bowling movies, and those are bowling movies. The other ones are documentaries. The bowling movies, all they do is make fun of bowling, which is kind of frustrating. Dreamer, and I have to I watched part of Dreamer. I don't think I ever watched the full movie, but that was made in like late 70s. It was probably one of the more realistic, quote, bowling movies that didn't make lots and lots of fun of bowling. Yeah, unfortunately, most time when they have bowling, they made fun. And I just saw that there's another movie, what's it called? I think Gutter King or Gutter something. And I was trying to watch it on the airplane, and I watched about 10 or 15 minutes of it, and it's like, oh my God, this is horrible. But that's comedy for you. Unfortunately, bowling's an easy target, and that's what they do. They have watched Belmo too much. Geez, he is slow. I don't think Jason's excessively slow. I think there's other guys that are much slower. But I do admit, I will say though that he like a lot of other guys. I mean, they wipe their ball, wipe their ball. I've asked guys, I said, okay, because I don't really wipe my ball that much. I'm like, okay, throw some shots, wiping your ball after every shot. And then I want you to throw some shots, not wiping your ball off. See how much difference there is. You're really not going to see much of a difference. The ball's still going to react about the same. The difference is that the oil is going to get into the ball, you know. And for me, getting bowling balls, it's a different story. And you don't get free bowling balls delivered to your front door all the time. I understand, you got to take care of your bowling balls, but it's just taking 10 or 15 seconds to wipe the oil off the ball, and all they're doing is just taking some of the oil off and wiping it all around the ball. So it's not doing all that they think, but it's doing some, obviously. But um, it, and I do it sometimes. I'm going to do it more when I'm using a urethane ball or when I'm bowling two-handed. And the reason why I do it two-handed is because my left hand will slip. So I'll actually wipe off that part of the ball. I don't necessarily wipe off the whole part of the ball. I just wipe off that part of the ball so my left hand doesn't slip when I'm bowling two-handed. Let's see, in recent years in professional bowling, with outdoor bowling a bit uncomfortable, even for professional bowlers when length a bit dry. Do you remember 99 at Bryant Park? Well, I didn't bowl at Bryant Park. I actually was there. I did kind of the ball testing because I didn't bowl well that week. And I went over there when they'd set it all up and threw the ball. And I'm like, this is not good because, I mean, there was so much dirt and stuff on the lane. It tracked my ball up so bad. It was ridiculous. And obviously when the ladies bowled at Reno, God, how many years ago that was, and they had a little dust storm and the dust got on the lanes and the ladies couldn't keep the plastic ball. It hooked so much. It was just, bowling outside, bowling is not an outdoor sport unless you want to change, get rid of oil. If you get rid of oil and everybody's bowling the same condition, then it'll be okay. The problem is um, bowling, we're used to bowling on oil, and bowling outside, you got the elements. Sun beating down can evaporate the oil a bit faster. Dust on the lanes. We had a problem with one of them. They had flowers down there. You could see the pollen that came off of the flowers got on the lanes. It was it's unbelievable. And it's more of a gimmick, and I just don't really care for gimmicks. So, my teammate averages 240. He's never wipes his ball off. Yeah, I mean it is what it is. I mean, but everybody, they always see the pros doing, oh, I got to do that. I got to do that. I got to do that. Now there's this thing where guys they're wiping their shoe with their hand and they're licking their hands. And I'm like, oh, that's not only is that disgusting. Technically, it's illegal. You're not supposed to put anything on your shoe. So I don't know where that came from. I guess they saw one guy do it and they said, oh, they did it, and now a lot of young guys are doing it. I don't understand that. But now, every once in a while, when I get on approaches that are really finicky, I have my shoe brush and I'll use that. But as far as wiping your shoe and stuff with your hand all the time, I don't quite understand that. I think that's just an odd pre-shot routine thing that is totally unnecessary. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed that. Like I said, I'm kind of out of it for 6 months, 5 more months anyway. Because like I said, I had my surgery 3 weeks ago tomorrow, and fortunately it feels okay. It's not great. I don't have a lot of pain. Biggest thing is hopefully that when it all heals that I won't have any issues and I'll be able to bowl, and who knows, maybe even pitch horseshoes again. I don't know. So you guys have a great night, and thank you.